Mr. Paul Andrews. So it's brilliant to have you on. This is the latest podcast for the Street Soccer Foundation. We brought it back. We kind of coined the phrase Street Soccer United during last year, and when obviously the COVID pandemic hit, and it was really our opportunity to reach out to our community of supporters and sponsors. Just to kind of see how we can all help each other and get to know each other. And I think going into this new year, incredibly, we are still in this lockdown situation, so we wanted to bring it back. And also on the sort of additional side of that, we launched recently our network, which is ultimately a community of our supporters, so official kind of club members who are really important to us, and we want to show that we care about them as individuals, not just businesses, because Paul, more than anyone, that businesses are made up of people, and that's what matters. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, before anything else, as I say, my little intro for you, I've wrote this down. I've actually planned and prepared for this. First of all, I don't know if you know this, but you and I, Paul, I was amazed at this, we share 379 mutual connections, probably mostly across Kent. So okay. When we get out of this lockdown, I'm up for you and me having a complete night out with all of these 380 people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
To let our hair down, although I'm losing my hair fast. But I've got here, this is unbelievable. So, Mr. Paul Andrews, before you introduce yourself, a serial entrepreneur, businessman, mentor. Now, I'm going to ring off a few here. Radio show host and producer, recruitment boss, non-executive director, Sage 100 global influencer. The list does go on, as you know, Paul. So how would you personally introduce yourself to someone you've never met before?
Well, hello, Keith. Thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. I'm really, really pleased to do it. How do I introduce myself? Hello, I'm Paul.
See, I knew it was going to be a closed one.
yeah. And then people go, "What do you do?" And I go, "Oh no." I mean, do you really want to know?
Which one?
Yeah, I do lots of stuff, and I genuinely do. I can't be bothered most of the time.
But Paul, honestly, how do you find the time, mate? I mean, I've got a load of questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
I'll probably go all over the place, in fairness. So, but how honestly do you find the time? And by the way, thank you so much for wearing your street soccer top as a.
No, it's a pleasure. Yeah, I wear it every day. I've been wearing it for a year.
You do, mate. I know. I think it was on your wedding suit, wasn't it, as well?
It was, yeah. It's the only top I've got that fits.
How do you make the time, mate? Honestly, seriously, because I mean, you're very well known across Kent. I mean, I will say that. I mean, hopefully, we'll get quite a few people nationwide that will see this. But in Kent, you are very, very well known.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people look to you as an inspirational figure, and I will say that on a sincere point. And but in that regard, you've got a responsibility actually there, Paul, because you do help so many people. But I'm just genuinely interested about how you manage that time accordingly to give as much as you do.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I'm actually a bear of very little talent. I don't actually have many talents, but one of the talents I've always had is the ability to delegate, or to get other people to do things for me, for want of a better way. So, to being serious, the reason that I can do as much as I do is I got good people working for me. And I'm surrounded by people that I rely on and I trust. And one of the big things about delegation is, if you're going to delegate to someone, you don't just give them the responsibility, you give them the authority as well. Brilliant. So my guys do stuff, and I trust them to do it. Now, they may not do it in the same way that I would do it, but I've asked them to do it, so I leave them to do it. Yeah. If I really think they're going wrong, I'll have a little word and I'll go, "Oh, is that really the right way?" And if they convince me that that's how they want to do it, then that's how they're going to do it. So I don't interfere in their decisions unless they ask me to.
Have you been like that all the way through, Paul? Like as an individual?
Yeah, I've always been like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's just one of those things. I think a lot of it stemmed from the fact that for some bizarre reason, I had a very senior job when I was incredibly young. And I realized that I didn't know anything. And therefore, I was reliant on all the people that worked with me to kind of tell me what to do and how to do it. So I've always been one for saying, "Well, how do we do that then? Well, what do we do? What do you think?" because I just didn't know. I mean, I was a vice president of a bank at 19, and I'm going,
Jesus.
I've got all these people working for me, and they go, right, what should we do? I don't know. So,
Jesus.
very early on, I realised that if I didn't ask other people based on their experience and their expertise, I would never get anywhere because I don't know anything any more than anyone else. I mean, fast forward 50 years and I'm a bit more experienced, but even so, lots of people, especially one of my big things is especially frontline workers. Frontline workers have more to do with your customers, suppliers than anyone else in a business. They know more about the reality of what's going on than anyone else. So they should be the first port of call if you do anything. But
Yeah.
we never do that. So many organizations try and manage from the top, but the top people haven't met a customer in 20 years, and
Very
so
true. Yeah.
it's all theory. Whereas
You know,
if you go down to the frontline customer support people and go, what are our customers like, they'll go, oh please.
yeah. Do you remember that program, Paul, Back to the Floor? Did you ever see that?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
exactly that, isn't it? It was
it's
fantastic.
exactly that. And
Yeah.
John Harvey Jones, who was the guy that did that, I had the pleasure of working with him for a few times, speaking on different platforms. I've got a photograph somewhere of me and him in Winnie the Pooh, matching Winnie the Pooh waistcoats. Seriously.
That's the next one. When we get you on this next time, Paul, you'll want that on. Obviously,
Yeah, trouble is,
you street something up underneath it, obviously, but
yeah, absolutely. No, it doesn't fit anymore. But Sir John Harvey Jones with that series Back to the Floor, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a big thing of his as well. And I was really, when I met him, I was really made up by the fact that his philosophy was very similar to mine, luckily.
Yeah.
But so that's a long-winded answer to your question. I'll get other people to do the work.
So I mean, it was when like if roll back not too many years.
Yeah. I've
Not
been
too
around a
many
long
years,
time,
but
mate.
like what you said, but like so when you say you was 19 when you took that unbelievable opportunity and responsibility. So as a teenager, then in that regard,
Yeah.
Can you remember, like, as a teenager, the Paul Andrews as a teenager, what were you like, mate? I mean, were you into education in school, and were you really popular? Were lots of people looking at you already thinking, oh God, he's going to make it and be successful? What were you like, mate? What was going on for you?
Well, I'm from an era that is very different to now. I left school when I was 14, and I was asked to leave, and I agreed quite quickly. Was I popular at school? I wasn't unpopular. I mean, I was fairly innocuous. My form teacher called me Peter all the time I was at school, so I didn't make much of an impression. I wasn't into school at all.
Right. Yeah.
The only thing I enjoyed at school was sport.
Yeah.
And I went to a rotten inner city boys secondary school. The only sport we played was football and cricket. I absolutely hated cricket, but I was the first time I got caned was for refusing to play in the school cricket team.
And saying that cane.
I got caned for and I all the way through my school career, I played for the school cricket team, and the whole reason for that is that I stupidly won a single wicket competition. and
that was it, you were in.
Yeah, and that's it. And I was in, and I had to play. And the reason I didn't like it is because it took so long, and it was in the evening. So you'd go like 3 hours standing in a field.
I'm with you there, Paul. I'm with you there, 100%. I mean, no offense to cricketers and cricket fans. I mean, I'm fortunate. I know an ex-England cricketer actually, and so he'll kill me for saying this, but I just found it so boring as well. I mean, I went to more of a rugby type orientated school. I went to Maidstone Grammar School, but and similar to you, I mean, because I was really quick, similar sort of experience. Because I was really quick, when the ball was given to me, I just sprinted away from everybody. They're, oh, whack him in the rugby team, and I hated it. And there was all monsters, and I was tiny, so I was running so fast, I was probably scared of everyone on the pitch. But I hear you. But so
it's really, really bizarre though. I've got to tell you this story because it's really stupid. Yeah, and it sounds like I'm blowing my trumpet, but I'm not. Yeah, I hated cricket, and the minute I left school, I never played cricket again. But my brother-in-law was a big cricket player, and I used to quite often on a weekend go and watch them play cricket. Yeah, but there was a charity cricket match one weekend, and I went along to watch. And when I got there, one of the captains came to me and said, "Oh, we're short. Would you play?" "Oh no, don't want to." And he's going, "Well, it's only a charity game. It's only a muckabout. Don't worry about it." And yeah, all right. I'll stand in the field, and if the ball comes to me, I'll try not to duck. Yeah. And then they said to me, "Right, you got a bowl." I went, "Why?" And they went, "Well, no, that's what we're doing. Everyone's having an over, 1 over each." Oh, okay. So I bowled my first ball, and I took the batsman's middle stump.
And that was it. That was it.
Right? No, wait for it. So they've all gone, "Blimey!" I mean, it was an accident. I didn't even know what I was doing. Right? So the next one, I bowled it. It was a daisy cutter. It was a nothing ball. The batsman put his bat to play it, missed the ball completely, and went LBW. So I'm now on a hat trick. Right?
Sign him up.
Right? So I'm thinking, I'm not doing this. So I just lobbed the ball, and the guy went whammo and hit it, and they caught him on the boundary. So I bowled a hat trick in the only time I played cricket in 20 years. And
that was it. You walked off. That's your legacy there, Paul.
I'm never doing this again, because one, I've never bowled before anyway, even when I played cricket, and it was ludicrously mad.
So that's unbelievable, because I was going to ask you how you got your break at 19 to become a VP of a bank. Instead, I should be asking you, why did you not get your trial for England?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I mean, that's unbelievable. But coming back to that 19-year-old aspect of grabbing that role, how did that come about? Because that's through the foundation, as you know, we support a lot of younger people, younger adults,
sure.
And that's banging our age range, for the academy program. So sort of typically 18 to 25. How on earth did that? I really appreciate it's different times, this, that, and the other, but just in general terms, how did that come about? Because obviously you've got to make the use of that opportunity. You might be presented with that chance, but you still got to grab it and run with it, haven't you? You could easily have just turned it away and not bothered with it. So how did it first come about, and how did you make most of it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm going to tell you the answer to that, and it is going to sound a bit like a lecture.
Well, I'd appreciate it, because that's the question.
Yeah. But it's the reality of who I am. I'm a very inquisitive person, and even though I hated school, I always was a big reader of books, and fact as well as fiction books. So I like learning. I just don't like formal learning. Yeah. And I like learning by experimenting and sticking my nose in and going, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? How does that work then?" So at the start of my career, when I was 14, I worked in a paper mill. I worked in turkey mill. And just as an example, one of the greatest pieces of advice ever given to me by anyone was given to me by a chap called Arthur Ells. And Arthur was a night shift foreman at Turkey Mill. And when I started there as a 14, 15-year-old, he said to me, "Listen, Pauline."
Peter, Pauline.
Yeah. Well, they all call me Pauline because this is going to be hard to imagine. I had really long hair. Bearing in mind, this was 1970. Yeah. So I had really long hair, and everyone called me Pauline. Yeah. Because I was tiny. When I left school, I was 5'1". Yeah, I'm 6'2" now. I was 5'1" when I left school and started work.
For you, Paul, it never happened for me. I was the shortest in my year.
I don't know. Yeah. Wow. But you're quicker than me, Keith.
Yeah, I've got a bit quicker.
Yeah. So Arthur said to me, "Listen, son," he said, "here's a bit of advice. First, learn your own job, then learn someone else's." And I took that to heart, and my entire life, that's exactly what I've done. No matter what part of work I've been in or who I've worked for, I tried to learn how to do my own job, and then I tried to find out what everyone else does. And that kind of strategically positions you for opportunities that may come along.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah, so I'll give you a classic example at the paper mill, right back where I started. I was a greaser and rat smasher. Was my first job, and there was.
There was on Google now, yeah.
No. It's on my CV, but I never get inquiries about it. I've got it on LinkedIn, rat smashing. a speciality. But but the fact is that there was a thing called a dryerman, and a dryerman's job was to put the watermark in the paper. Yeah, and we had two dryermen, and we did two 12-hour shifts. And one day the dryerman called in sick, so they called in the other dryerman, who went, "Oh, I've just finished a 12-hour shift. I'm not coming in all over again for another 12 hours. That's not fair." So the foreman said, "Well, we'll have to shut. Everyone will have to go home because we can't do anything." So I've gone, "Well, I know how to do it." "What do you mean you know how to do it?" "Well, Brian showed me." "Really?" "Yeah, honest." So I did the dryman's job one night. And the only reason I could do it is because I asked loads of questions. "Why are you doing it like that? Well, how does that work? Why do you do that?" And he went, "Oh, I'll show you. Just look, this is how you do it." And he just showed me. So when that opportunity arose, I was there and I did it. And then eventually, a couple of months later, a vacancy arose and they gave me the job because I'd already shown I could do it. And that really is the story of my entire career.
That's
Just
but that thirst for knowledge, Paul, is that's an amazing bit of advice, isn't it, for a lot of people? I mean,
yeah,
and you know what, young or old, don't matter age is out the window, could be anywhere,
yeah.
anyone, that thirst for knowledge.
And the interesting thing is, I don't possess a single qualification at anything. Okay, I don't have an O level, a GCSE, a CSE. I've got 50-yard breaststroke.
Which has held you in great stead.
Yeah, yeah. Keeps my head above water. um, Boom, Trish. So it's not formal qualifications or formal learning. It is experiential learning, and that I've got nothing against formal qualifications. Great. If you're going to do GCSEs or A levels or ONS or HN, anything or degrees, brilliant. Well done. But I haven't got any of that. Everything I learned from people that knew how to do the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did it for years with experience and asking them questions and finding out how you do things and asking why things. I won't bore you with it now, but when I got into computing in 1972, which was the start of my 50 years now of working in IT, it was exactly the same. I was paying attention to something that somebody was doing and asking them questions, and an opportunity arose out of that, which moved me forward, which eventually, a few years later, had me ending up being the vice president of a bank.
Jeez. I mean, it is amazing, Paul, and that can be applied across the board in so many different ways. And
Yeah.
one thing, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, and I don't necessarily want to dwell on it, but obviously we're in a national lockdown right now, and I hope you don't mind me asking, but just for the benefit of those that might come across this, that when times are quite challenging, and no doubt, we're living this right now, so it is of the moment. But even in the past, historically, how have you, through that experience and experiences that you've had, and the people that you've peppered with questions, maybe that kind of mentoring aspect of it as well, which I know you're big into and you support a lot of people. What would you kind of advise or give, and how have you personally coped about dealing with kind of setbacks, challenges, failures across the board, personally, professionally? What have you got within yourself, Paul, that has got you through hardship, basically, mate, if you don't mind me
Sure.
asking?
Yeah. I don't know if I specifically know the answer to that, to be honest, because like everyone else, I mean, I suffer. I get fed up. I get depressed. Um, Sometimes I get, my God, I can't see the end of the road here,
Yeah.
or something happens and you think, oh blimey, this could end everything, and you sit up night after night worrying about it,
Yeah.
trying to, with sheets of paper and notepads, trying to figure a way out of a problem. um what I guess, based on how long I've been around and how many problems I've faced in my life, is and this will sound a bit trite, but it's the reality of it, is that nothing lasts.
Yeah.
Eventually something comes along that changes the parameters. And that's what I've found more than anything, is you don't actually solve a problem, but the problem disappears by being replaced by something else.
Yeah.
And that something else may be a positive or it may be another negative, but it kind of overrides it, because there are very few things in life apart from your health, and maybe one or two other things that are terminal, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So if God forbid you had a really horrible, nasty health problem, then there's only one thing you can do, which is put yourself in the hands of experts and hope that they can effect a cure. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is no other real solution. Yeah, and that's those are real problems. Anything else are just procedural. Yeah, so it's all going wrong at the moment. So if you look at my business at the moment, we're in terrible trouble because of the lockdown. It's really had a massively bad effect on my businesses, and I can sit there worrying about it every night, but it ain't going to change anything. I can't do anything until lockdown ends, and
And
I
Paul,
can't.
just on that
Yeah,
one, is that the jobsinkent.com one? Because I know
yeah.
you own quite a few, don't you? So
Yeah, but most of my businesses are suffering. None of them are really, uh, in a position to, because there are some businesses that the lockdown has worked for them very well.
yeah,
Because of the nature of the business they're in. Like whether they're making PPE or hand sanitizer,
yeah,
or whether they're remote working technology companies. None of my businesses are in those kind of fields, so my businesses are all suffering like anyone else's. Um, I try as best I can, but everything I've had to do is about cost cutting at the moment, and making everything smaller. Whereas I spent 21 years trying to make it all bigger.
yeah.
uh,
It's really weird, isn't it?
you just have to try and react, and it's horrible. But my experience is that eventually something happens that takes your mind away from what you were worrying about and puts you in a different place. And that's when it goes away. So for me, if I was saying to someone, look, you need to change the way you're thinking about this, it's about trying to empty your mind of the problem.
Yeah,
As human beings, we try to solve the problems we face, and sometimes you're better off, you know, putting the problem aside and going, I can't solve that at the moment. I need to walk away from that and do something completely different.
yeah,
And that going back to careers, that has happened to me in careers as well. Yeah, because I worked in the paper industry. I then worked in a motor factors. I worked in local government. I worked in the insurance business. I worked in the nuclear industry. I worked in the oil and gas industry. And then I worked in banking before I, started my own businesses. And all of those career moves were as the result of things going wrong in the previous place. Yeah, for one reason or another.
yeah,
Not necessarily personally wrong, like the industry was in a bad way. So, in the oil and gas industry, for instance, we went through a period in the 70s when oil and gas production went down the tubes and the price of oil went through the roof, and everybody that worked in the business got sacked. Yeah.
right.
Now, I wasn't sacked, but I'm thinking I'm not hanging around here because, this isn't going to last. I need to do something different. And that's how I made the move from oil and gas into banking. Uh, I looked around and said, where can I use my skills in a different place that's got more to it than where I am at the moment? Luckily, I worked in IT, so
And what
um,
on that though, that's really interesting me, Paul. So I was wondering that was that in terms of where you moved around,
mm,
was it where you were kind of pushed because of the circumstances of the industry, or were
yeah,
you seeing what was going on and then you left off your own accord and were proactive to find something else?
yeah, a bit of both.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, a bit of both, and also a third thing, which is luck. um, and luck and opportunity do play a
yeah,
big role in a lot of things. But we create our own luck and we create our own opportunities by being aware of them. Yeah,
definitely, yeah,
without being horrible. Back in the day, back in 1972, I worked with a lad, and we were both computer operators. Yeah, uh, I've had a long career in corporate in IT, right up to very senior management level, and I've done lots of different things in IT. The guy I work with still does the same job as he did 40 years ago. Now,
yeah,
we both had the same opportunities.
yeah,
He just didn't want to take them. For whatever reason, he wanted to stay where he was because he was comfortable. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying he made a wrong decision,
no,
but he is where he is still because that's what he chose to do.
yeah,
We both had the same opportunities. So, sometimes you can take an opportunity and it will lead you somewhere. And sometimes that's scary because you don't know if it's the right thing to do. And at other times, I've had to plan and go, do you know what? I need to get out of this and do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Has that
uh,
been hard though for you, Paul, when you come to that realization? Because you may have responsibilities, family or personal or
yeah,
circumstances in terms of living expenses and this, that, and that. Has that been quite a challenge?
yeah,
No, you want to leave, but how can you if you've got responsibilities?
yeah. No, it's a good question. And the fact is, I've been again lucky that most of those moves happened before I had those responsibilities.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So by the time I got into banking, and at the time, shortly after I got into banking, I got married, and then bought my first house and stuff like that. That would have made it harder. You can't just go, do you know what? I'm going to go and work in Libya, or there are other considerations.
Yeah.
But by then, I was starting to mature a bit and realize that I didn't have to change companies to change direction.
Yeah.
So when I was working for Citibank, I could do different things in City. I didn't have to go to another company to do it. I got to the point where I realized, I can stay here, but I can agitate to do something else,
Yeah.
which is exactly what I did there. And I did lots of different roles while I was there. And then when I eventually did leave, I left because I just realized that the bank at that time had a new chief executive, and his entire philosophy was to sack as many people as possible. And I just thought, I don't want to hang around here anymore. I want to go. So I moved to another bank. But intrinsically, again, building on my experience, and one of the things that I'm really keen about is people using the talents they've got in different ways. We all have talent. Every single person on this planet has some talent
Yeah.
at something,
Definitely.
and you can deploy that talent against all kinds of things. But so many people get trapped into thinking in the same way. Like if I'm an offset litho printer operator, that's the only thing I can do.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It isn't remotely the only thing you can do. You can take the knowledge and skills that you have and deploy it in a completely different way in a different place. Uh, and for me, that is something that people need to recognize. Need to have more faith in their own talent, basically.
Oh God, honestly, God, I'm itching on my chair here because you're going to get me started. Because I mean, again, because of the work we do at the foundation, but I'll start off with that self belief piece. What
Yeah,
goes up in here. What you think
yeah,
deep down.
yeah,
That's what starts first of all, isn't it? Before you let anyone else's voice come in,
yeah,
you wake up in the morning straight away. You've got your self talk.
yeah,
And your own actions and thoughts and this, that, and the other. So
yeah.
I think if you're thinking intrinsically, like you're talking about, internally, you're thinking that's all I know, that's all I can do. But actually, like you say, well, realizing what you do and what your talent is, how that then can be applied in different areas,
Yeah,
and that is absolutely plausible and
yeah,
and feasible. So it's just that belief in that you can do other things. Then you go and action on those thoughts, which
yeah,
produce outcomes and then
exactly,
different results, that kind of thing. So I'm with you all the way on
exactly.
that. I think over the course of your career, though, is there any kind of real, I guess, sort of spotlight in terms of the thing that you've really mostly enjoyed, as an experience of all the things that you've done? And I know obviously with what you do now, and you can include that if it's
Mm.
right now, fantastic. But all of what you've done, is there a real kind of that was just the best period of my life in terms of work wise?
Um, uh, uh, in terms of corporate career, then working at Citibank, because one, I was there the longest, and two, I was so young, but then kind of grew into the job. Um, and at the time, the bank was incredibly innovative, which is why I was doing the job I was doing at such a young age.
Yeah.
Because back then, in IT, we were building an electronic banking system, and you've got to recognise this is before the internet existed, and sadly, before the PC had been invented, let alone the mobile phone. Yeah,
Typewriter.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I talk about telex and stuff, and people go, "What?"
But
Um,
all of the young
um,
people that we support will be saying that. What the hell
yeah,
are you
yeah, yeah.
talking about?
So that period of time was incredibly innovative because the senior management of the bank recognised that banking was going to become a digital industry,
Wow.
and we were early adopters of that. So, I was working till midnight most nights. Not because I had to, because I was under the cosh, but
Yeah.
because I didn't realise what the time was. Yeah, we were just there were a whole group of us that worked in technology, Luke and Lindsay and Rod and Dickie Bird and loads of us, and we were at work at we get to work at 6 in the morning because we were excited to work on the projects we were working on, and we'd still be there 11, 12 o'clock at night finishing off what we were doing. So that was an exciting time.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm most proud of the businesses that I've built,
Yeah.
but to be honest, almost every job I've had some enjoyment out of it somewhere. Either when you first start and you're learning it and it's all new,
Yeah.
or when you become a bit more experienced and you can influence what's going on. So almost everything I've done has had an element of joy and stuff. And then when I stop enjoying it, I leave. It's as simple as that, really.
No, that's really great though, Paul. I mean, because I think in fairness, actually, you're right, because obviously you kind of chosen your destiny to a degree, haven't you? Because of the fact that you've set up your own companies and this, that, and the other. I guess there's people out there that that as an employee they might not have that kind of I guess outlook in terms of what you've just explained and described. The fact that you've generally liked most of what you've done. I think then if I turn it slightly, then could you maybe put a kind of a description around what gets you out of bed now, kind of thing? What's your given purpose at the moment? In it, again, we're in a lockdown, but in general terms, what drives you each day forward? What, as I say, you see each day ahead, you plan for the day accordingly, but what is your kind of purpose at this moment in time, would you say?
Okay. I mean, my biggest focus right now is the radio.
Yeah.
Um, there are challenges with that at the moment because, like everyone else, we've run out of money.
Yeah.
Our income's dried up. But bizarrely, at the same time, we're more popular than ever because we've been providing a service, trying, all the way through the last 10 or 11 months. Each week, I've been telling business listeners, what's available on business grants, where to find, so all the information that's coming out from the government, I'm collating it and putting it together. So we're talking about it a lot. I'm working harder than I ever did on the radio by trying to collate the information every week. And you know what it's like. The government are all over the place. So, last week's rules change next week.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep up with all of that. So that we can impart that to our listeners, and our listeners are going through the roof. We're getting busier and busier and busier, but it's getting harder and harder to do it because one, I can't have anyone in the studio anyway,
Yeah.
so we're having to pre-record everything. So almost every day, I'm doing 2 or 3 Zooms a day, just recording people for broadcasts.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm actually not earning any money, but being incredibly busy.
And how does this feel that it's roles reversed then, Paul? For once,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't wait to get back to doing nothing and earning loads of money. Yeah.
Honestly, that's I mean, it's brilliant, and thank you for doing what you are doing. I mean, on a serious, I mean, I'm well aware of what you're about, boys, and you're a dear friend, and I, someone I really look up to, and you know that I've told you that. And but I think I'm really hopeful that a lot of people can get to see this as well when we share this once we've got this out there. And
Yeah.
I think if you don't mind, for all of those that are watching this, because you are incredibly inspirational, you're very knowledgeable. Would you mind just dropping in now as we wrap the interview, like your contacts, the best way of getting in touch with you? Because you mentioned
Sure.
obviously you run your own radio show, but what's the best way of getting in touch with Paul, kind of on socials and this, that, and the other?
Yeah. If you want to talk to me, then best thing to do is drop me an email, paul@jobsinkent.com. Or you can listen to us on the radio at Biz Radio, B-I-Z, bizradio.co.uk. And there's also some contact details on there as well. But Paul at Jobs in Kent, if you want to talk to me.
Perfect. And we'll be putting up on them on the once we post this when it's on our channels, Paul. We'll link you in as well on that. But I mean, if Paul, it's been brilliant. I mean, as I say, it's a snapshot. It's a sort of a brief insight into the world of Paul Andrews. I mean, I could talk to you all day, and I know, and that's absolutely not the case because you've got far too much important things to do. You can talk to me all day, but honestly, I'm really, really grateful you coming on, and really, you know, you look well, you keep well, and everything else, and love your family and that, and you know, any kind of parting advice you want to give the, you know, the watchers and listeners, as it were.
Yeah, well, I want to say a couple of things actually, Keith. I want to just say how important street soccer is, yeah, and how important it's going to be in the coming year or so as well. Because as we come out of this lockdown, there's going to be a lot of issues. You know, youth unemployment is at the highest level it's ever been already, and that's going to get worse for a little while, sadly. So organisations like street soccer are going to have an incredibly busy time doing what you do. But if you weren't there, it would be much worse. So all power to you, Keith, and your team at Street Soccer, because you're going to be even more need, and you've been needed anyway, but you're going to be even more needed for the next few months while we unravel ourselves from where we are. And I'm happy to do whatever I can to try and support you guys because I just love what you do. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thank
Um,
you very much, Paul.
in terms of advice, just keep on keeping on. We will get there. We will get out of this. Things will be different once we're out of it, but that's what happens with change. You know, these major change points should launch us in new directions when we can do new things. So there will be a positive outcome eventually. We just got to get there.
Totally agree, Paul. It's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant advice, and thank you so much for what you've said about
Pleasure.
the foundation. And yeah, we're aware of that. I mean, we're seeing, you know, ever increasing demand at the moment already. So you're right, and aware of the statistics and everything else. So but your support is going to be massively valuable to us as we go forward. But thank you again, mate. Really, really appreciate that.
Pleasure.
You know, we'll catch up again soon, hopefully. But here today, you've listened to Paul Andrews, the CEO of jobsinkent.com. And serial entrepreneur. I mean, that's the best way. As his first line of how he described himself. I was so curious how, Paul, you describe yourself online, and that's how you start, which is very, very fair. A serial entrepreneur. Paul does all sorts, both, you know, for the business community as well as for charity as well. And you know, please do link in with him if you haven't done already. Thanks again, Paul, for your time.
Pleasure. Lovely to talk to you, Keith.